Welcome to Get Rich Education. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. You can make one single-family home produce between $5,000 and $15,000 of monthly cash flow profit for yourself. How does that work? How do you get started? And how exactly do those profit and loss financials look? It's not an entirely passive path, but it can be a highly lucrative path for you, and your positive demographics are already baked in the cake. Today on Get Rich Education.
Learn the easiest way to create wealth and passive income with real estate. Now you can access the best deals without the stress or hassle of having to find, renovate, or manage those investment properties. Narada Real Estate saves you time by providing you with passive income investment properties in some of the best U.S. markets. Learn more at PassiveRealEstateInvesting.com and download your free copy of the ultimate guide to passive real estate investing. There's no obligation and nothing to buy. Simply visit PassiveRealEstateInvesting.com.
For a real estate investor like you seeking an income property loan, go to Ridge Lending Group, NMLS 42056. Over the years, you've heard President Chaley Ridge generously devote her time to you here on the show as a guest. Ridge provides investment property loans in most U.S. states, and you're going to find out how they've helped more people realize their dreams of real estate financial freedom than any other mortgage lender in the entire nation when you get started at ridgelendinggroup.com.
You're listening to the show that has created more financial freedom than nearly any show in the world. This is Get Rich Education.
Hey, you're inside GRE. From Bedminster, England to Bedminster, New Jersey, and across 188 nations worldwide, you are back in that abundant place where financially free beats debt-free every single time. This is Get Rich Education. I'm Keith Weinhold, but you're not here for me. You're here for you. We are all aging. You are already a minute older than when you began listening to me today. America is aging, and most developed nations of the world are. Well, you might as well profit from aging, and in a sense, you're going to learn how to do that today. We're talking about how, as an alternative to long-term residential income properties, you can build an empire of assisted living homes built within single-family homes and generate about $10,000 of monthly profit or more. We're talking about how you go about finding the right property for this and then building the right business of residence inside it. Now, you're going to have a few more expenses than you would on your profit and loss as opposed to a regular long-term residential rental, but often substantially more income. That's why your cash flow is astronomically higher. Now, there are more moving parts with assisted living homes, ALHs as well. You do need to meet a licensing requirement. You'll need to have things like grab bars added in the bathrooms. Your on-site staff, which is your biggest expense, includes a manager that oversees things and care staff that might put residents to bed or bake meatloaf for all of them. Now, here on the show, I've told you that I would have more pleasant surprises for you this year, like having the wisdom of the illustrious Jim Rogers with us, and like the Live Before You Die program. I've got some more, amenities like that to tell you about here on some of the next few episodes. Let's talk to today's guest about how an everyday person with everyday means can be profitable and serve society with single-family homes converted into ALHs. With more than 30 years of real estate investing experience, 4 books and 2 radio shows under his belt, today's guest is also a certified financial planner. He's appeared on the cover of Real Estate Wealth magazine. He's also a frequent public speaker. Today, he owns the Residential Assisted Living Academy, where he shows you how you can make one single-family home generate between $5,000 and $15,000 every month. And that's not a gross income figure. That is your cash flow. I first met today's guest at a live event years ago, and ever since, I just seem to run into him in a lot of places that I go. I'd like to give a big welcome back onto Get Rich Education today for his first appearance since 2017, Gene Guarino.
Hello, Keith. Good to hear you.
Our population is aging. We're going to need more senior housing. Tell us more about that.
The baby boomers themselves, and I'm one, and many of you listening may be as well, or your parents are. As we age and we're living longer than ever, some of us need help. And we call that activities of daily living, assistance, where they need help with anything from bathing to feeding to medication management to housekeeping and so on. So what we do is we simply take single family homes and convert them into assisted living homes that allows those people who need that assistance to be taken care of 24/7. And it's a very lucrative industry, and it's what we call doing good and doing well, where we can help a lot of other people as well.
Now, we're talking about investing for the everyday person here, something that a mom and pop investor can get into. And I love how you bring up your byline there, Gene. You call it doing good and doing well. And of course, we want people to get into assisted living homes for the right reasons. So speak to the right mindset about doing good and serving people, and just as important, to do well and be profitable.
You know, when my mom needed help, and what I mean by that is when she was getting older and needed assistance, everything became really clear to me, Keith, and it becomes very real. So much of our adult lives are spent around making money and success and all kinds of things like that. But when mom needs help, it really gets very real very fast. And when I went out to look for a place to bring mom that she could be well taken care of, that I'd be very confident that she's safe and loved and taken care of, what I found was really appalling, scary, frightening, and yet it was a massive opportunity. And so this idea of doing good and doing well, the doing well means make a lot of money. There's a lot of money, and we can go over all the details of what's being paid and spent and made in profits in assisted living. But the doing good, knowing that I've got a home that I'd be proud to have my mom, your mom, anybody's mom or dad live in, knowing with full confidence they're well taken care of, and I'm making money, that's the do good and the do well.
And we want to see that ALH, assisted living home residents, have a dignified existence. And I think one interesting way in which you're doing that is you're helping ensure that residents aren't in some big institutional place, but rather it's more of a converted single-family home environment. Tell us about that.
A lot of people assume when we say assisted living, they think of a big institution, kind of a converted hospital or something like that. You green walls and linoleum floors, and you smell the neglect as soon as you walk through the front door. And when you think about that, you know, mom, 85 years old, has lived in a house, a home, her entire life. She doesn't want to move to a hotel or a mall or a converted apartment complex. She wants to stay at home, but she needs help. So moving into a home where there's 8 or 10 other peers her own age is very, very appealing. So it is a single family home in a neighborhood just like we all live in, and it's a very comfortable home where they may or may not have a private room, could be a shared or semi-private room, but it's a home where there's caregivers taking care of them, and you wouldn't even know it exists. You could literally be living next door to it, wouldn't even know that that residential assisted living model is being operated right there because it's just a well-kept home on the street with only a few cars because the residents don't drive anymore and the caregivers come and go during the day. And it's a wonderful way to help those people in a very comfortable environment.
So we're really talking about two different entities here. We're talking about the physical property, the real estate itself. And then secondly, we're talking about the business with the residents that operates inside of that property. So starting with the property, how would someone go about identifying the right property physically with respect to things like location and property size? And where would they find that? LoopNet, Craigslist.
Yeah. Keith, I'm really glad the way you put that was so clear. The idea of real estate is one piece, the business is the other.
Yeah.
So let's go with just that real estate, which now is the scary part. That's the easy part. Meaning it's easy to find a house. It's the location that's the key. The critical key point to this whole thing is location, location, location. What I'm looking for is the demographics in that location. So it's not that it's mountainside or oceanfront, but it's the demographics. Who lives in that area? The more people, the better. So a denser population, more clients to draw from, a higher income than average. So I don't want to be in a low-end area. I want to be in a high-end area, but not too high, not the top of the top, the cream of the crop, but above the middle, but not way at the top, with a lot of people there. And the ultimate demographic that I'm looking for is 50, 60-year-old people who own their homes because their parents are 80 and 90 years old. And when mom needs help, they're going to move mom closer to where they live so they can go visit them on a regular basis. So you notice you talked about real estate, and the first thing I went to is demographics and location, because we could scrape away an old house and build a brand new one. But if I were to look at just the real estate, what I'm looking for, if I can find a single level, that's preferable over 2 or 3 story for the obvious mobility issues that seniors tend to have. Not a deal killer. All over the country, this is done in 2 and 3 story homes. But single level is better. More bathrooms. So I can convert open space into bedrooms fairly easily with adding closets, doors, and windows. But plumbing for bathrooms is the bigger issue. You only need 2 bathrooms for 10 or 12 people from a minimum requirement. From state to state, it's a little different, but 2 bathrooms, 10 or 12 people is adequate. But when we do it, we add bathrooms because private bathrooms is what people really want. You can charge anything you want, but you can charge more when they have a private room and a private bathroom than a shared room with a shared bathroom. So bigger is better than small. Bedrooms, the more the better, but we can convert space. Bathrooms, the more the better. 2 is the minimum. But if it's already got 3, 4, 5, that's a great start. Single level versus 2 and 3, and the demographics based on the location is really the key.
How could someone find a property with a resource like LoopNet or Craigslist? Or
one of the typical searches, like I'm going to be heading out to Texas this week to do presentations there. So before I head in, I go to Zillow because that's a resource that everybody can go to and get the same basic information, correct or not, right or wrong. Let's not go there. But go to Zillow, put it in some parameters such as 3,000 square feet with 3 bathrooms and 3 bedrooms or more. So when you put that in, it gives me a certain space requirement of 3,000 square feet. Now, what I'm looking at there, I'll give you a rule of thumb, everybody who's listening, 300 square feet of living space per resident is very comfortable. Most states' rules and regulations based on the size of the bedrooms and bathrooms and so on and so forth, you could do this in a 1,500, 1,800, 1,900 square foot house and have 10 residents in it. But that's tight, uncomfortable, not the quality that we encourage. So 3,000 square feet is a good amount of space, 10 or 12 people very comfortably. The bathrooms, notice I said 3 bathrooms or more because 2 is okay, 3 is better, and that's harder to add bathrooms than it is bedrooms. So those are my basic criteria to begin.
Now, let's talk about how the profit and loss spreadsheet would look. With something like a long-term rental, typically it's rent income minus mortgage, vacancy, insurance, maintenance, taxes, utilities, and management. The sum of that equals your cash flow. How is that different in one of these assisted living homes that's domiciled inside a single-family home?
So this is where I'm going to define that separation. Real estate is what we're talking about. So on the real estate side, I'm going to own the real estate in one entity, and it'll lease that real estate to another entity that I own and operate, which is the business operations. So the rent that it pays to the real estate entity might be twice the market rent. So if the market rent in your area is $2,000 for that home, I might rent it for $4,000 to that entity. Now, I'm going to step back for a minute. When we talk about, twice the market rent, those of you who are just real estate investors and say, look, I want to get in, but I don't want to be the operator of the business. I just want to lease my home to an operator for that twice the market rent. And you're thinking to yourself, how do I find that client? And why would they pay twice the market rent? Well, why would they pay twice the market rent is because they're going to make a lot of money and they can afford to pay it, but they are not the real estate investor or the owner of real estate like you are. I think a lot of times people just take it for granted. They see a business and assume they own the real estate. No. Most of the times, the businesses you go to do not own the real estate. Somebody owns the dirt. They lease the dirt to somebody who owns the building. Somebody owns the building, leases it to somebody who operates the business. So there's all kinds of cash flow happening. But single family home, if you own that home and you want to lease it to an operator, they're willing to pay more than the fair market rent because they're going to be operating a business that makes them a lot of money. And I'll run through those numbers as soon as you're ready.
Yeah, let's talk about that because the operator will have some expenses that they would not have for a long-term rental.
Yeah, and a long-term rental, just staying on the real estate side for a moment, if you're getting twice the market rent, if you're charging $2,000 and your cash flow is $300 a month, after all expenses are said and done, imagine charging $4,000 a month. Now you got $2,300, that additional $2,000 that you're charging, and you've got a massive positive cash flow. In addition to that, you have a long-term low-impact tenant because nobody's going to rent your home for a year. They want to rent it for 5 years with options to renew. at a higher than market rent. So those are just like win-win-win. It's a beautiful client to have. Now, on the other side, when we talk about operating the business, and I'll give you all the details later, but I'm going to run through it really fast for you. The average person in America today in assisted living is paying $4,000 a month per person to live in that home. So if you have 10 beds, which is an average size residential assisted living, single family home being used for this, $4,000 a month times 10 beds is $40,000 a month in gross income. The expenses, and your biggest expense is the caregivers, the people taking care of those residents. Your expenses, after it's all said and done, the real estate, the caregivers, the food, the insurance, everything are going to be about 70% of that gross income. So your net on that is about 30%. That's what we're looking for. That's the model. So 40,000 gross, 30% of that is net. The bottom line is you should be netting about $12,000 a month from that business. Now, if you also own the real estate and you're leasing it from yourself, you're doing well on that side, but you're also netting $12,000 on the business side.
Now, of course, there are a few ways that someone can get involved with this. Gene's already bringing up some of these points. You can either build a property or find a property and fill it with assisted living home residents one at a time until it's occupied. Or alternatively, you can buy an existing operation, an existing business. You could buy either the property or the business full of tenants inside. So there are a few ways to approach this.
The fastest way to get started is to buy the existing business. Now, there's two things you need to be watching for. Anybody who's listening right now, I want you to be thinking of what I'm saying right now. Is it worth buying? Is it in the right location? Does it have the potential to make a profit for you? It's amazing to me how many people have gotten into this business who did it for one reason. They've got a home, the kids moved out, they've got some empty bedrooms. Hey, I'm good at making food and cleaning the house. I'm just going to have a few extra people in the house, make some extra food, take care of them, and charge them $5,000 per person, and they have 4 or 5 residents who live in the house. That's a job. You don't own the business. The business owns you. That's not what I'm talking about doing. When you think about buying an existing one, if somebody says, I have a house, it's got 5 beds, and I'm the manager, and I'm the caregiver, and I'm the cook, the baker, and the candlestick maker, I don't want to buy that. Somebody else says, I have a business for sale. It's a 10-bed facility. It's in a home. I have caregivers that come in. There's a manager that's there. The home is full. It grosses $40,000 a month. My net income is $12,000 a month. That's a business I'm willing to buy. So the value of that real estate combined with the business itself, it's all open to what a willing buyer and willing seller is willing to pay. But just to give everybody an idea, the real estate stands alone. It's what it's worth based on a CMA compared to other properties in the area. And if it's twice as big as everything else in the neighborhood, it doesn't mean it's twice as valuable. There's pros and cons with the bigger house, more bedrooms, more bathrooms, but not everybody wants that. So it is worth something more, but it's got to be comparable to that area. The business side, it's worth a multiple of the income. So if it's $12,000 a month, that's $144,000 a year. It's worth either 1, maybe up to 3 times that net cash flow. That's the value of the business. So if you want to buy the business, make sure it's in the right area, right house, right profitability. You're going to buy the real estate. You're going to buy the business separately. The business is worth 1 to 3 times that net income after all expenses. And you can recreate that situation. It's interesting, Keith. My son and daughter-in-law are the top realtors in Arizona for residential assisted living. And whenever they're looking at a house that is operating as a residential assisted living that's for sale, the calculation they do is if I bought the house next door, did the conversion, started the business, and a year later I'm in the same position, what would that take? What would it cost? And what it really comes down to is paying for speed. Am I willing to pay $250,000 today, so I'm cash flowing day one?
Right.
Or do I want to wait for a year, go through that process to save $150,000 to get to that same spot?
Gene has just told us how to value one of these businesses that's occurring inside the real estate separately from the real estate. And I don't want this point to get lost on anyone. A lot of times empty nesters, a husband and wife think, well, maybe we can just rent out a couple spare bedrooms and run it from our house. But I'd remind you to treat it as a business. Oftentimes you get trapped, you can't go on vacation, and you've got to ask yourself what kind of lifestyle you created for yourself. Gene, I want to tell you a short story and then have you advise with some direction here. Now, I have a buddy, his name's Brandon, and he and I go trail running and mountain hiking together quite a bit. He's a longtime listener of the show here, so he's heard you here before, and that motivated him to get started with assisted living homes, and I know that he also attended one of your live classes. Brandon and his wife purchased the asset, the real estate, the home, and the current operators are leasing it from them for a little bit longer. But Brandon and his wife are slated to close or formally transition the business so that they are going to own it by next month. So they'll soon own both the home and the business. They chose to purchase an existing operation nearby rather than build it and fill it themselves. What their plan is they expect to open up a sister assisted living home within the next 6 months or so, somewhere in the same area here. And they figured that that's going to allow them some economies of scale from a staffing and administrative perspective. So any particular thoughts with regard to this and scaling up and how he should be thinking?
I love it that Brandon is following the exact plan that we've laid out for him. I mean, it's so great to hear that because one of the fastest ways is to buy an existing one. And then the next thing is the economies of scale of having more than one home. So we use the concept of a 3-pack. You can have 2 homes, 3 homes, 5 homes, but if I said 6-pack, it would sound bad. So think of a 3-pack as 3 homes within a half hour of each other. So it's an easy commute for a manager, somebody who's going to oversee the operations, not me, not Brandon, not you. Somebody to oversee the operations and be able to go to all 3 of those homes easily. So 3 homes within a half hour. It could be one manager that oversees or manages those 3 homes. The caregivers could be shared from home to home. The food can be bought once and then divided out amongst the 3. The economies of scale come in big time. And with net income of $10,000, $12,000 from a single home, imagine having 3 of these homes within a half hour of each other. Life gets really good.
And if you get 3 times as many homes, you don't necessarily need 3 times as much staff, hence the economies of scale advantage.
Yep, the economies of scale within the management. And it's not so much the staffing, because you do need the same number of staff within the home to take care of the residents, but the ability to, instead of having to hire additional people, sometimes you can share them from home to home, or they can cover a shift. All those things are part of the economies of scale.
Okay, so say a person like Brandon has an assisted living home currently licensed for 8 people, and he wants to work to open it up to more residents. If you exceed a certain threshold, do the rules change into that of a more institutional setting?
Every state's going to be different, state by state, and then locale by locale. So within the state that he's in this case, it's Alaska that we're talking about, I assume.
Yes.
So in Alaska, in that state, I don't know offhand what the limits are, but in Arizona, where I am, it's 10. So if I had a home that's licensed currently for 8, I could expand or go to 10. Now, if I wanted to get past 10, it's more than just filling in paperwork in an application. It might be petitioning to allow me to do more. So the idea of knowing what the rules are in your area is critical to getting started. So knowing what it's called, like you said, assisted living home. In some states, they call it a personal care home. California, they call it an RCFE, residential care for the elderly. Each state has a little different nuance to how they do it and the numbers that they have. But we've been in states, we've got students in states where the state limit is, let's say, 8, but we have students with homes that have 16 residents. And that's because they started the home with the 8, then they went back and they petitioned to have more. And the city said, yes, you're doing a great job. We need what you've got. And yes, you're welcome to expand. And then they put on additions or converted more space. And that's a great way to do it as well.
As you're seeing, you can both serve people and generate massive cash flow from just one single family home. More with Gene straight ahead on Get Rich Education. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. MC Lobsher is the host of the Cash Flow Ninja podcast and president of Producers Wealth. He is on a mission to help you achieve financial independence and freedom as soon as possible. He achieves this by integrating the infinite banking concept with real estate investments to increase your returns and recapture cash flow that you are not even aware of that you're losing. MC shares the #1 strategy of investors in his holistic wealth creation course at yourownbankingsystem.com. Finally, Total Control Financial gives you checkbook control of your 401k and IRA money to invest in real estate. It's time to get your retirement money into your own checking account, but you've got to avoid the little-known tax that you'll pay with any self-directed IRA. Instead, it's time for the QRP. Learn more and get your free copy of the QRP book by text messaging QRP in all capital letters to 72,000.
This is Profit Boss Radio's Hillary Hendershot. Listen to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold and don't quit your daydream.
Welcome back to Get Rich Education. We're talking with Jean Guarino of the Residential Assisted Living Academy, how you can generate $5,000 to $15,000 of cash flow, not just gross income, but cash flow every month from a single-family home converted into an assisted living facility. Jean, just talk to us more about how, if one did want to get started and they needed to build their own business by hiring a manager and hiring caregivers, how one goes about finding that and what qualifications those people need.
Every state's got their own rules and regs for what a manager is and what they need to be. So on one end, you've got the low bar, which is 18 years old, a GED, and a 24-hour course that the state provides. On the high end, Arizona, where I am, it's 104 hours of training, TB test, background check, fingerprint card. And to become a manager, then there's additional training and testing and 2 years of experience. So it really depends on the state. Every state's a little different. I gave you from the simplest, lowest bar to the highest bar. Most states fall somewhere in between and tend to be on the lower end. I wish they had more requirements sometimes. But finding the managers is a key piece to doing this in a way, Keith, that it doesn't require you to be there every day. People ask me all the time, how much time do you put into this? You own 3 of these homes in one area, 3-pack. How long is it going to take me in my life?
Right.
I tell people 5 to 10 hours a week. If you do this right, 5 to 10 hours a week. The reality is there's some weeks where I put in 10 minutes. And there's other weeks where it could be 10 hours if I actually go to the house, which I rarely do, to get hands-on and do something. But realistically, the only time I go to the homes is when we do tours on our training classes that we hold and we go see the homes. That may be the only time in a month or two that I go see one of our homes, because everything else is done over the phone, text, Skype with the manager. The manager is the one who's taking care of the day-to-day, the nitty-gritty, and everything below.
Now, you as a prospective ALH investor, you might be envisioning yourself having everything dialed in with your ALHs after a period of time and putting in your 5 to 10 hours. What are you actually doing during those 5 to 10 hours, Gene, as the investor once you're dialed in?
Well, if you are truly just an investor, a passive investor, you wrote a check, you don't have to do a thing. As a matter of fact, when I work with private investors, the less they want to do, the better it is. They just want a quarterly report. Tell me things are good, tell me what's wrong, and keep it simple. So if you're truly just an investor, you're going to be doing nothing. There is no 5 to 10 hours. I'm an owner and an operator. So as an owner-operator, I'm spending 5 to 10 hours a week. In my 5 to 10 hours a week, for instance, yesterday I got a text from my manager, and then I called her, and she said, we have somebody that wants to move into the room. They only have a budget of $4,500. This room is more. What can we do? And I said, well, here's an option. Let's move them into a different house right now. And then when the room is available over in this house with that budget, then we can move them over here. So she just needed that little direction. We're talking $4,500 a month. That's a pretty significant client, if you will, $54,000 of income in a year, $108,000 in 2 years. I don't let her make all the decisions. So that is one of the types of things that I do. Last Wednesday is payroll day. So that's when I have to go into my payroll system and I basically check the work that the manager did, transfer money from one account to another. And doing that took me 20, 30 minutes. And that's one of my busy times.
Well, that's an important distinction that you just made there between the investor and the owner-operator. As successful investors in long-term buy and hold real estate, especially for the production of cash flow, we're often most successful if we think about how our tenant is thinking. It's similarly true in assisted living homes. You're going to be a successful owner-operator, we'll call it, if you're giving your residents what they need. So with that in mind, just talk to us about why residents might prefer the smaller environment that you're providing with a single-family home versus a larger place, because larger places have their set of advantages as well.
So I love the fact that you've said resident and did that very distinctly and properly, because they're not tenants. And a lot of people listening may be thinking tenant, tenant, tenant. Nope, it's not a tenant-landlord relationship. It's a resident that we're providing a service for. Part of the service is a place to live. But that leads to a lot of things that make our life so much easier, because all kinds of questions are coming up in people's minds, like, what happens when they run out of money? What do we do? How do you evict? Well, it's not a tenant, so there's never an eviction. It's just like anything else. If you're consuming at the restaurant, you're at the buffet and you can't pay the bill, you have to go. Anyway, that's a different topic, and I just wanted people to know. The second thing is we focus on private pay individuals. So these are people that are paying out of their own funds, their own money, or their family's money to pay to stay in these homes, not Medicare, not Medicaid. And that means these are going to be a little bit nicer, a little bit higher quality. Some of the homes that our students have are knocking my socks off. They are unbelievably beautiful. I would move in myself, but they cost $7,000 a month to move in. So the nicer the property, the nicer the area, the more comfortable it's going to feel like a home. The difference between a big box with 200 people and a home with 10 people is 200 people. Sounds like fun, but that's the difference between going to the movie theater and going up to the snack bar to get a snack versus I'm watching it on my TV at home and I can put it on pause and go to the kitchen and get an apple to eat.
Right.
200 people, that sounds good to some people, but I'm not a big crowd guy. I mean, I'd rather watch it at home than be at the game with 50 or 60,000 people myself. But grandma, 85 years old, her mindset is I've lived in this house, and we always say mom, right? Dads are in these homes too. But very commonly, it's a woman in their 80s and dad is gone. The kids have moved away. The kids come and visit occasionally. They want to stay at home, but they need that help. Choices, go to a big box, 300 people, and a movie theater in there and a craft room in there and so on, or a home with 8 or 10 people like her that she can become friends with. That small environment tends to be a better environment for that senior.
And Gene, I'm really glad you talked about the involvement component, because here we talk often about not just what your ROI is on an investment, but what's your ROTI, your return on time invested. Another thing we're a big proponent of here on the real estate side, not so much the business side with an ALH, is leverage. How does financing look for the individual investor on these smaller assisted living homes?
Well, the reason that we do the residential model in many cases is because of the ability to get easy financing. To buy a home and to get it financed from a bank, if it's just a single family home, easily non-owner occupied, you can get 80% loan to value. If it were owner occupied, you might be able to get 95%, but going to a bank and getting a loan, easy for a single family home purchase, even for a rental. We also use private lenders, SBA, USDA, commercial, syndication, and so on. But the idea of buying the home is one piece. Now the renovation. See, now that's a little different, because instead of just saying we're going to refurb the kitchen or change it out, we may be adding bathrooms and putting in sprinklers and additions and converting garages into bedrooms. So that $100,000, let's just pick a number, may not be as easy to go to the bank and borrow unless they know better what you're doing it for to generate that future income. So buying the house is easy. The capital to renovate will depend on your ability to present, negotiate. And then the operations, when you're operating a business itself, this is one of the mistakes that people make. I've been in business a long time, Keith. You know me, I got a great beard and I've earned it. In all the different businesses, I'd say one of the key mistakes that people make is being undercapitalized. They don't know what it takes to get from that negative cash flow to break even to positive, to get to that huge, massive payday, to get that $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 a month in net income. There's going to be a period of time, and let's say it's $20,000, $30,000 that you're digging a hole in negative income, and you need to be prepared for that. And as long as you know what that number is, we can prepare for it before we even begin. Have reserve available capital there, or the ability to borrow it as needed when needed. So that right there gets us through that point. But I do like to work with private lenders and investors. I like to do syndications where people are given the ability to invest in. There's so much money out there looking for a home. It is unbelievable right now. I mean, look at the stock market going up and down. People are freaking out. There's money sitting in banks earning nothing. So 1%, 4% in a CD, or actually they wish. A bond fund is 4%. CDs are 1%.
Right.
Yeah, they were even earning 6%. They're like over the moon. And we can do a lot of work. There's so much money that wants to get in this game.
Well, you brought up so many good points there, Gene. In winding down, in the fact that we want to be profitable and we want to provide service to society, if someone is running an assisted living home and a few months later, just say 4 to 6 months later, what are some signs that they know that they're operating well and that they're serving people? How do they know that they're doing it right shortly after beginning?
I'm going to talk from the business side, from the doing something good for those residents. You can tell by the smile on their face and the thank you notes you get, the satisfaction from those family members. From the business side, I'm going to give you some benchmarks, some rules of thumb that we look for. People always ask, Keith, how long does it take? And the answer is, it depends. The house itself, once you choose it, to close on that, if it's all cash, could take a few days, a few weeks. If it's an SBA loan, it could take 3-4 months or longer. And then the renovation, is it minor and it's a week, or is it major? You're putting on additions and takes you a year. So those are big depends. The business startup, though, once you open that door, turn the lights on and say, we're open for business, I'm going to give you a rule of thumb, 2 new residents a month. So if I've got 10 beds, 2 new residents the first month, 4 the second month, 6 the third month, 8, and then 10. So it should take me 5 months to fill that home or less. If I can do it in 2 months, good for me. If I'm conservative and I say 2 new residents a month, as long as I'm in that path right there, I feel good. I'm comfortable with that fill rate and so on. I don't want to just fill the house with low-paying people just to say I'm full. They got to be the right residents, the right price, all the details. So 2 new residents a month, that's going to give me that financial warm and fuzzy. I'm shooting for 100% occupancy all the time. Reality is residents are going to move in, move out based on their health condition. And, I'll be frank, in this business, most people simply pass away of natural causes inside the home. Yeah. And if you're squeamish with that, hey, we're all going to pass away. We can have a separate conversation about that if you didn't figure that out. But it's usually not traumatic. It's not anything other than a very natural situation. But when somebody moves out, we're already showing the room to move somebody in. And the quickest I've ever done is 2 days from somebody moved out to somebody moved in. And the longest, there's times where it may be an odd room or an odd price, or it's a shared room with a male and everybody who comes seems to be female, where it could take 2 months to fill a room. But if you're not diligent about keeping the place full, that's a problem. But if you do exactly what we say in our system, step by step by step, you'll do just fine with those benchmarks.
Well, there are a number of moving parts here. As you can tell, this can be quite lucrative. Gene is skilled. He's the expert in making this simple for people and bringing it down to your level. Gene, each time you're here, there's so much more that I want to ask you about and that I could ask you about. But if someone wants to find out more, where should they go?
I'm going to give you all access to a free introductory training. And it's a real simple website. It's RAL101.com. So 3 letters, RAL, and 3 numbers, 101.com. Go there, free introductory training, enjoy it. If you have any other questions, just call us, reach out to us, and I'd love to help you with it.
Gene, it's always insightful. Thanks so much for coming back onto the show.
My pleasure.
Now, I did take my state-administered full 2-day ALH licensing course. It's really chock full of regulations, and they almost try to scare you off completely from being involved in the whole thing. And I've talked to other attendees in other states, and they told me that they had a similar experience. Now, you will have to take a licensing course in your home state at some point. But here's the thing. I recommend taking Gene's class first. In fact, if I had taken Gene's class first, I might have a different mindset myself. Engage with Gene's resources. Build up both your why and your how inside of you for both profiting and serving. There are different routes to real estate financial freedom, and ALHs might be one that resonates with you. In summary, compared to long-term residential rentals, with ALHs, you've got some more work, a business with more moving parts, and you'll have substantially more income as a successful owner-operator. I've got some good resources for you here. My hiking buddy, Brandon, that I discussed earlier, was kind enough to provide his email address to you. It's in today's show notes. Imagine being able to follow up with one of Gene's students like Brandon, and Brandon has been an action taker as he's just closed on his first assisted living home and can definitely give you some boots on the ground, as real as it gets kind of perspective like few people can. He is doing the thing. You can learn more from emailing my buddy Brandon. Today's show notes also have links to Gene's best educational resources that you can engage with. Now, like a lot of topics, there's so much to discuss with ALHs that we could not cover every exhaustive possible aspect today. All 3 times that Gene has been here, we've pivoted into a few different subjects. So you can listen to my earlier chats with Gene here on the show just by going to GetRichEducation.com, searching the word Guarino, and you'll see that Gene was previously here with us on episode numbers 97 and 158. Engage with Gene's resources. Thanks to the talented Gene Guarino today. I'm Keith Weinhold. I'll see you next week when I'll be back to help you build your wealth. Don't quit your daydream.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.
As America's 3rd largest city, Chicago, Illinois has big economies of scale for real estate investors. But there are problems with investing in highly taxed, fiscally strapped Illinois. You can beat it when you invest in Chicago land, staying on the Indiana side of the state line. Your property tax on a median Indiana home is less than half that of an Illinois property. Forbes ranks Indiana as one of the top 10 states to do business. With typical rents at $1,250 and purchase prices at $125K, Northwest Indiana numbers work. Learn more and connect with the turnkey provider at GetRichEducation.com/Chicago. That's GetRichEducation.com/Chicago.
71% of Americans aren't saving enough for retirement. It's going to get worse as people live longer, and you need to start thinking differently. But you can't lose your time. Real estate is the investment vehicle that's made more ordinary people wealthy than anything else. Keith Weinhold of Get Rich Education is host of one of America's top investing shows, Disrupting Wall Street. He's an international best-selling author, a writer for Rich Dad Advisors, and has been an active income property investor since 2002. He has created thousands in passive monthly income for countless followers, and now he has a free book, The 7 Principles for Creating Wealth in Your Life. Get your copy now at GetRichEducation.com/book. That's GetRichEducation.com/book. Because invest in what produces income for you now and later. Sign up now at GetRichEducation.com/book.
The preceding program was brought to you by your home for wealth building, GetRichEducation.com.